The following program is captioned for the hearing impaired.
WGBH TV Boston presents Crockett's Victory Garden.
Welcome to Crockett's Victory Garden. I'm Jim Crockett. I've just picked one of these small tomatoes in our greenhouse. This is a type of Russian tomato. The seed was sent to us from a friend who had been to the USSR. I'd like to show you, while we're talking about tomatoes, a plant that we have been growing here in the greenhouse. As you see, we have tomato cluster formed right there with 5 small fruit on it. More blossoms and more fruit coming. This plant is about ready to be shifted into a larger flower pot, but we can look forward to more tomatoes as the winter season progresses. Now today we're going to talk about gardening under lights and gardening in what could be total darkness. We're going to show you how to grow sprouted seeds, and in our plant clinic we have an ailing aechmea. I wish it had a better name, but that is its true name. Now, on the progress report today, I want to talk to you about 2 kinds of cyclamen. In the first place, if you look at this beautiful one, this is the standard cyclamen that you find in flower shops around the country. This plant will blossom continuously from now until April. It has great numbers of flower buds at all stages of development coming along inside. This particular plant is unique in that though the blossoms are mostly white, here is one that shows a pink striping on the bloom. This is a mutation. This is the kind of a thing which a plant breeder might use to come up with a strain of cyclamen that had all of its blossoms with pink stripes on them. But this is not the real plant that I wanted to talk about today. It's this one right here. This is a miniature cyclamen, very, very much like the wild plant which comes from the Near East. This is the kind of a plant perhaps that these larger ones originated from. This one is called a miniature cyclamen. I planted the seed about 20 months ago. They blossomed last fall, and again, now we're ready for another whole season. It has that wonderful cyclamen quality of a great many flowers coming on month after month in the house. You might try to send away for the seeds of something like that and grow your own if you can't buy a plant of this type. Another thing which we've been doing recently was to do an air layer on a rubber tree. Now this rubber tree is approximately 7 feet tall, and most of the leaves on the bottom part of the plant had fallen off, or at least there was this big gap in the stem. It was getting really too big for the average house. So I made an air layer, which meant that I made a cut on the stem, propped it open with a little piece of toothpick, dusted it with rooting powder, covered it with damp sphagnum moss, sealed that in with plastic, and the roots are beginning to grow within this ball, and in a few weeks will be ready to cut off and transplant into a flower pot. Well, a friend of mine brought in a somewhat similar type of thing the other day. This is a Chinese evergreen, and this person had made an air layer on the Chinese evergreen. And here again you see the plastic on the outside. And I'm going to peel this apart and see how that root system is coming within. Seems to me I could see some roots. There they are. Here are the roots coming right through that ball of moss. Ordinarily I wouldn't take this moss off, but I do want to show you what's happening in here. You see those roots formed? Now that plant is now ready for potting up. And all that you do at this stage is just take your shears and cut it off like this, and we're ready to pot this little plant up into Jiffy Mix is what I use. Now, I have a lot of people say to me, well, you keep mentioning Jiffy Mix, and just what is Jiffy Mix? Well, it happens to be one of many so-called soilless soils. This one with that particular proprietary name. It's made of approximately equal quantities of peat moss and vermiculite with some nutrients added. It is light in weight, it's sterile, no weed seeds in it, and plants seem to grow very rapidly. Well, there's a little plant grown from an ailing, a Chinese evergreen. Now in this particular plant, this old plant, I'd cut that stem back like that, and now we have two very nice plants where we only had one poor one previously. Now the next thing that I'd like to speak about are bean sprouts. And I guess everyone is familiar with bean sprouts. If you've ever been to a Chinese restaurant, you certainly know what they are. Now this is the bean sprouts of the mung bean. About 2.5 days ago, these bean sprouts were simple beans, and this is what they looked like. The mung beans, this greenish bean like this, and this is what we started from. Now, the way to do is to soak them overnight. Now, I'm going to simply take a jar such as this, cover the bottom of the jar with the beans. Now, you don't want to put too many in there because, as you see, they multiply about tenfold as they germinate. Now, we put the beans in, add water to cover them quite well. Just like that. All we're going to do now is to set that aside overnight so that those beans will absorb as much moisture as possible. They will increase in size maybe 100% or even 200% before they begin to send out sprouts. Now you don't seal up a jar such as this, but instead use a piece of gauze or netting of some kind over the top to allow the air to get in. None of this process can continue unless oxygen can get in there to nurture the seeds as they sprout. So we'll allow those seeds to go overnight and swell. Then we throw this old water away and rinse the seeds. They say every 4 hours, but if you will rinse the seeds in the morning and again in the evening with tepid water, just set these out of it doesn't have to be in a dark place, but a dark place does help them to grow faster. You will get an enormous increase in the size of the sprouts. What is more, the sprouts are very, very nutritious. For example, here's another kind of a seed that you can start. This is the alfalfa. Now this is just the same kind of alfalfa that is grown as a crop in a field to feed cattle. An excellent plant. This is a legume, just as the mung bean is. When these are grown, this is what you get. A great salad type of a vegetable. This is the alfalfa. Now, a half a cup of alfalfa has sprouted alfalfa has as much vitamin C as 6 glasses of orange juice. So this is quite a remarkable thing. The vitamin B2 amount will increase as much as 1,000% just in the process of germination. And the starches within the plant, within the seed itself, are converted to a form which is very readily digestible. Not only can you grow alfalfa and mung beans, but you grow chickpeas and oats and sunflower seeds, a whole variety of things. Now this is being used not only for humans, but also for cattle. Now in close to Phoenix, there is an area called a hydroculture farm where they grow trays of oats and other grains for a matter of 3 or 4 days, and they grow up perfectly green for about 2 or 3 inches tall. They feed the entire thing to the cattle, roots and all, just as we eat them. The cattle get great nourishment, put on growth very rapidly. The temperature, by the way, for growing this type of thing is about 68 to 72 degrees, the same kind of temperature we would consider to be comfortable indoors. Well, now the next thing I want to talk about today is growing plants under lights. And perhaps the simplest thing that I could show you in the beginning is a spotlight. I should begin by saying that every one of us has seen the rainbow. We see all those beautiful colors in it. Well, plants grow best when the colors that, the light that is emitted from the lamp is on the red spectrum and the blue spectrum. And this particular lamp is one of the new ones developed which does just that. This this I like as a spotlight. Is kind of nice because you can take something like this with its clamp, you see, hook it onto a wall or a banister or something to shine down on a plant which might be several feet away from it. It's possible to grow a plant in a place where it just couldn't grow under ordinary light conditions just by using a spotlight. Now that's not the only way, nor is it especially the way that you might want to grow plants. I would suggest that although the spotlight is very important, perhaps the most important thing that you'd like to know is how to grow plants under fluorescent lights. Now fluorescent lights are the same, the ordinary fluorescent tubes that you're familiar with. They go into an ordinary fluorescent fixture. But again, the lamps themselves, the tubes, have been developed scientifically to emit a great deal of the red and the blue light. Now here you see a typical installation, and I'll tell you more about this in a moment, but you can see those tubes underneath there. Now this fitting, by the way, is a simple 48-inch industrial type fitting, not expensive. Now you can buy those that are already made up, beautiful to look at, expensive to buy, but if you want to make your own, you can buy these fixtures and put them together using those kinds of lights. Now I have seen absolutely beautiful ones built into a bookshelf, for example, or underneath the counter, in the kitchen even. You don't, in that instance, in neither of those instances do you need this reflector, because the surface above, which should be painted white, will reflect the light back down onto the plants. One of the questions that a person asks is, how long should the lights be on and what distance should they be from the plant? Well, the best way to tell, I'll give you a kind of a rule of thumb. The closer that you can get the lights to the plants, the better they're going to be, because these fluorescent lights are absolutely cool to the touch and they won't burn the plants as an incandescent light might do. But in any event, the thing that you need is a timer. Now, this is a simple timer. It costs less than $10. It has a mechanism for over a 24-hour period. This is set to turn on at 7 o'clock in the morning, turns off at 11 o'clock at night. Now that gives 16 hours of intense light for plant growth. And most plants will do very well in the beginning if the light duration is 14 to 16 hours. How do you tell again about the distance from the light to the plants? Do a little experimenting. If your plant looks, say like this one, with the leaves flat across the top in this type of a plant and sturdy, dark, rich color, you know that the light distance is about right. But if those leaves started to have long stems and to stick upward like this, it means it is drawing for the light, and the light should be moved closer to the plants. Now you can have that on a portable, on a chain arrangement or a pulley arrangement, some way so that you could raise or lower them. Well, and now the next thing I want to talk about today is mushrooms. And this is, of course, comes as a strange thing in a gardening world, because mushrooms are a type of fungus, and generally speaking in gardening, we'd like to get rid of all kinds of fungi. But here we have a typical mushroom. This is cut open to show the various parts of the structure of the fruit itself. And this is the fruit of a type of fungus. The stem comes up like this. This little remnant of a little annulus, it's called here, once covered the cap, which burst through it and then expanded, showing these little slits in the bottom, which are called gills. And the gills produce the spores, not seeds, but analogous to seeds. And this is the fruiting body of the mushroom plant. Now, the mushroom plant itself, the vegetative part of the plant, looks like white thread and grows in out of doors right in through the soil and the leaf mold, and it's rather hard to find unless you know what to look for, just like white threads, where you can't grow them very well out of doors, and it's rather difficult to grow them as the commercial man does. In the first place, the commercial man perhaps either has a cave or he builds an air-conditioned building in which he can maintain a high humidity and a temperature of about 54 degrees the year round, and he can produce mushrooms the year round. Well, very, very complicated. And let me say, in the beginning, let's say if you want to try to grow it as a commercial man does, you have to begin with fresh horse manure and wheat straw. Pile them together as though you were making a compost pile, 4 or 5 feet tall, and allow them to stay there moist for a week or 10 days until, when you stick a thermometer in there, it registers 130 to 140 degrees, very hot. Break the pile down, put the outside edges to the middle, and moisten the pile and let it ferment again. Now, you may have to do this 2 or 3 times until finally the pile will begin to cool. We come down to a temperature at about 70 degrees, and at that time, this material, which is called greenhouse mushroom spawn, is stuck into the soil at intervals, and it grows to make those thread-like materials I was talking about, and then eventually the mushrooms. Well, that's a long process and a good one, but if you want to do a still easier way, you can buy a mushroom kit. In this instance, we have a moisture-proof tray, a box in which the material comes, and then in here what they call compost. Now, this is the manure and the straw mixed together and fermented. It's lost all of its odor. It has and much of its structure. This has to be spread out rather evenly, a couple of inches deep in this instance. This is kind of a shortcut method of growing mushrooms. And then they have a soil which has to be sprinkled on the top. Now, it seems strange to think that it is necessary to have soil on top of the spawn itself, because the soil is not the material in which the mushroom is going to live. But this will have to be spread out evenly over the surface. Then we close the cover partially, such as this, and then drape a piece of plastic over it and put it in a dark place. Could be perfectly dark or semi-darkness at least. Keep it barely moist. In 2 or 3 weeks, what will come out of that looks like little pinheads, and there are the beginning of the mushrooms, which will come out eventually. Takes a matter of a month or even 2 months for the first ones to come out, but they will produce over quite a long period of time, maybe 6 or 8 months. Now we come to our plant clinic, and I have in the plant clinic today a plant which I call an ailing aechmea. Well, the aechmea itself is a very handsome plant. This is Aechmea fasciata, a bromeliad which comes from Central and South America and from the islands of the Caribbean, where there are hundreds of different kinds of bromeliads. This particular one is known as an epiphyte or an air plant. It lives normally on the horizontal branches of jungle trees, resting and clinging to the bark of the trees without being parasitic upon them. All the tree does is supply the support up off the ground where there's great air circulation. Now, these plants are unique in that the centers of the plants are very tightly woven leaves which form a cup in which rainwater falls. Now, the way this plant gets its nourishment, or part of its nourishment, let's say, is from insects which fly into ground or bird droppings. Gradually, this material is assimilated into the leaf. A very strange kind of a plant growth, rather unique. Well, let's talk about the way to propagate a plant such as this. They can be grown from seeds, but in this instance, we'll talk about growing it from a sucker. This plant, the one now with blossoms, is beginning to die. Here you see the ends of the stems have already beginning to turn brown and to lag down like that. But before an aechmea dies, it makes sure of the next generation by sending a sucker out from the base of the old plant. And here you see this nice, healthy young thing coming along here. Now, all you have to do is take a pair of shears and cut off the old one, like the young one, like that. Now, the reason I don't throw this old one away is it might possibly send out another sucker which we could propagate later. But we can take one like this, and since I have already said that this plant does not require, it does not get its nourishment from the soil to any great extent, but from the air, the soil acts mostly as a support. And here you can use gravel. I'm going to use a mixture of about half and half sand and peat moss. All it's going to do is sort of provide support and a sort of a counterbalancing weight to this rather heavy plant. It becomes especially heavy, of course, when you have the weight of the water that's being held in the cup. There's certainly nothing fancy about this. This one, unfortunately, has already started a few roots. Just stick that little plant down in like this, and that is ready to grow, and will grow very nicely in the home. This likes a night temperature of 60 to 65 degrees, daytime temperature of 70 degrees or more, and can be propagated not only from seeds, from sprouts like that, but from seeds. Now, I brought in this little fellow from my own greenhouse at home. It's about 1.5 years old now, and it's already beginning to make those distinctive markings on the sides of the undersides of the leaves. This is aechmea fasciata. Even this little bit of a plant has that cup of moisture in the center. You must remember to keep that cup filled with moisture at all times. Feed the plants once a month with a half-strength houseplant fertilizer. Now, if you have some questions on gardening, why not send them to Crockett's Victory Garden, WGBH, Boston 02134. My first question today comes from Richard Prunier, who who says, I'm trying to grow African violets under artificial light. How low should the light be, and how many hours should it be on? Well, I've covered that one pretty well in my description of the light garden. As close to the leaves as you can. That's going to be attractive to you, and about 14 to 16 hours a day. Now, Sue Bonner has a Norfolk Island pine, about a 4-foot tall Norfolk Island pine, and this is what they look like. It is grown about 6 inches in side growth, but not up. Apparently, the leader was destroyed before I bought it. The top branch is 8 to 10 inches long. Is there any way I can restore the leader? Well, I should tell you first of all, unless you can actually see that the leader has been broken from out of the tip of it, it may be that leader is just slow in developing, and it will eventually do that. Sometimes the plants will make these side branches and then eventually send up a top one. But if it does happen that leader is destroyed, another leader may start from the axils of the old branches. As a matter of fact, 2 or 3 of them might start, and then you can save one to make another taller plant. I had another question here about Norfolk Island pines too, and this person said that Helen Dexter wanted to know about one that became too tall. Can I top it and root the tip? Years ago, this used to be done. Extremely difficult. It requires greenhouse conditions. Most of them nowadays are grown from seed. Mrs. Thomas Barrett has a question about passion flower plants. I was given a cutting of a passion flower plant over 1 year ago. It grew through the winter and produced one blossom. Put it outside for the summer and it blossomed profusely. Now it's 3 feet tall and coiled around itself. Doesn't look too healthy. Should I cut it back or make cuttings? Well, do both, Mrs. Barrett. Cut it back and take cuttings from the tip. Cut your old plant back to 4 to 6 inches from the main stem. First of the year is a good time to do that and make great new growth. If you want to, you can repot it. You'll have, from that old plant, you'll probably have a half a dozen new ones that will blossom for you this next summer. Mrs. Leonard Conboy, which has a variegated Swedish ivy, which looks healthy, but all the new shoots are coming out all green. What's wrong? Not enough light. If you give the plant more light, the variegation will appear back on the new foliage, which develops after you have put the plant into the light. Florence Maddox says, should we put the lily and oxalis bulbs in the dark after planting? If so, how long? No, they don't need to go in the dark. They can go right onto a brightly lighted windowsill and grow right on from there. They do not like the bulbs such as tulips, which have to go outside for a dark period. Ellen White said, my spider plant appears to have little scales like halves of walnut shells stuck to the leaves and the shoots of the baby plants. What should I do? Well, those actually are scales. That's a scale insect. It looks like a little turtle or a little, as you say, walnut, half a walnut shell. The bug itself is under the shell, sucking nourishment out of the plant. If you have only a few of them, use a cotton swab dipped in alcohol, or use a toothbrush and just soapy water and wash them away. You might have to keep after it 2 or 3 times in order to clean the plant up very well. Well, now my tip for today has to do with how to keep houseplants happy when you go away for a ski weekend. And simply involves a piece of plastic, and I like to use something, such as you'd get from the cleaner. Make that into a little coil, set your plant right inside like that, moisten it to the proper degree of moisture which you'd like the plant to have at all times, and bring that plastic right up over the top and make a little tent. And clip that together and set it in a brightly lighted spot out of the sun. Now you can go away for 2 or 3 weekends if you want to and come back, and this plant will be just as healthy as the day that you left it. One more tip from Crockett's Victory Garden. I hope you enjoy the program every week.
Funds for captioning this program were provided by the Bureau of Education for the Handicapped, USOE.